Hello, everybody. I am your host, George, and welcome back to another episode of Reach into History. Today, it's time to get rather patriotic and focus on Her Royal Majesty, Queen Victoria. Victoria's father was Prince Edward, Duke of Kent and Strathearn, the fourth son of the reigning King of the United Kingdom, George III. In 1818, he married Princess Victoria of Saxe-Coburg-Saalfeld, a widowed German princess with two children, Karl and Theodora, from her first marriage to the Prince of Leiningen. The Duke and Duchess of Kent's only child, Victoria, was born at 4:15 a.m. on the 24th of May 1819 at Kensington Palace in London. Victoria turned 18 on the 24th of May 1837, and less than a month later, on the 20th of June 1837, William IV died at the age of 71, and Victoria became the Queen of the United Kingdom. Official documents prepared on the first day of her reign described her as Alexandrina Victoria, but the first name was withdrawn at her own wish and not used again. Her coronation took place on the 28th of June 1838 at Westminster Abbey, and over 400,000 visitors came to London for the celebrations. She was the first sovereign to live at Buckingham Palace and inherited the revenues of the duchies of Lancaster and Cornwall. She was also granted a civil list allowance of £385,000 per year, which allowed her to pay off her father's debts. Though Victoria was now queen, as an unmarried young woman she was required by social convention to live with her mother, despite their differences over the Kensington system and her mother's continued reliance on Conroy. Her mother lived in an apartment within Buckingham Palace, but Victoria often refused to see her. When Victoria complained that her mother's proximity promised torment for many years, she found out it could be avoided by marriage, which Victoria called a shocking alternative. Victoria showed interest in Albert's education for the future role he would have to play as her husband, but she resisted attempts for herself to be rushed into marriage. Victoria continued to praise Albert following his second visit in October 1839, and the Queen proposed to him on the 15th of October 1839, just 5 days after he had arrived at Windsor. They were married on the 10th of February 1840 in the Chapel Royal of St James's Palace, London. Victoria was infatuated. She became pregnant soon after and survived an assassination attempt when 18-year-old Edward Oxford attempted to assassinate her while she was riding in a carriage with Prince Albert on her way to visit her mother. Oxford fired twice, but he later claimed that the guns had no shot. Her daughter, also named Victoria, was born on the 21st of November 1840. The Queen hated being pregnant and thought newborn babies were ugly. Nevertheless, over the following 17 years, she and Albert had a further 8 children: Albert Edward, Alice, Alfred, Helena, Louise, Arthur, Leopold, and Beatrice. In 1845, Ireland was hit by a potato blight known as the Great Famine. In the next 4 years, over 1 million Irish people died and another 1 million emigrated. In Ireland, Victoria was labelled the Famine Queen, despite the fact that in January 1847 she personally donated £2,000, which by my calculations would be worth £184,100 today, to the British Relief Association, more than any other individual famine relief donor, and also supported the Maynooth grant to a Roman Catholic seminary in Ireland, despite Protestant opposition. After the Indian Rebellion of 1857, the British East India Company, which had ruled much of India, was dissolved, and Britain's possessions on the Indian subcontinent were formally incorporated into the British Empire. The Queen had a relatively balanced view of the conflict and condemned atrocities on both sides, and instead insisted, urged on by Albert, that an official proclamation announcing the transfer of power from the company to the state should breathe feelings of generosity, benevolence, and religious toleration. At her behest, a reference threatening the undermining of native religions and customs was replaced by a passage guaranteeing religious freedom. In March 1861, Victoria's mother died, with Victoria at her side. After reading through her mother's papers, Victoria discovered that her mother had in fact loved her deeply, and Victoria was heartbroken. Albert took on most of her duties, despite being ill himself with chronic stomach trouble. In August, Victoria and Albert visited their son, Albert Edward, the Prince of Wales, and spent a few days holidaying in Killarney. In November, Albert was made aware of gossip that his son had slept with an actress in Ireland. Appalled, he travelled to Cambridge, where his son was studying, to confront him. By the beginning of December, Albert was very unwell. He was diagnosed with typhoid fever and died on the 14th December 1861. Victoria was devastated. She blamed her husband's death on worry over the Prince of Wales philandering. Victoria wore black for the remainder of her life to show her state of mourning. She avoided public appearances and rarely set foot in London in the following years, and this seclusion earned her the nickname Widow of Windsor. Her weight also increased through comfort eating, which caused her to further shy away from the public appearances. This self-imposed isolation did in fact diminish the popularity of the monarchy. In 1887, the British Empire celebrated the Golden Jubilee of Queen Victoria. On the 23rd of September 1896, Victoria surpassed her grandfather, George III, as the longest reigning monarch in British history. The Queen requested that any special celebrations be delayed until 1897 to coincide with her Diamond Jubilee. The Queen's Diamond Jubilee procession on the 22nd of June 1897 followed a route 6 miles long through London and included troops from all over the Empire. The procession paused for an open-air service of Thanksgiving held outside the St. Paul's Cathedral, throughout which Victoria sat in her open carriage. The celebration was marked by vast crowds of spectators and great outpourings of affection for the 78-year-old Queen. Through early January 1901, she felt weak and unwell, and by mid-January she was drowsy, dazed, and confused. She died on Tuesday the 22nd of January 1901 at 6:30 in the evening at the age of 81. On the 25th of January, Edward, Wilhelm, and her third son, the Duke of Connaught, helped lift her body into the coffin. She was dressed in a white dress and her wedding veil, and alongside her were an array of mementos commemorating her extended family, friends, and servants. One of Albert's dressing gowns was placed by her side, as well as a plaster cast of his hand. With a reign of 63 years, 7 months, and 2 days, Victoria was the longest reigning British monarch and the longest reigning Queen Regnant in world history until her great-great-granddaughter, Elizabeth II, surpassed her on the 9th of September 2015. At the end of her reign, the Queen's full title was Her Majesty Victoria, by the grace of God, of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland Queen, Defender of the Faith, Empress of India. Thank you everybody for watching. I hope that you were amused, unlike Victoria herself, who would have been very famously not amused. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see more content, and leave a comment telling me what you'd like to see next time. Also, don't forget to check out my Twitter page at reach_history for video updates and more. I hope to see you again soon.